Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 15th annual New Partners for Smart Growth Conference. It has been held, as I think most of you are well aware, in Portland, Oregon. I do have the great pleasure of introducing to you our Executive Director, Kate Meis, and if Kate can approach the microphone, then I will say very quickly that she has been, over the past 2 years, a real firehouse, a source of energy, constantly moving, energizer, executive director, and we are moving onwards and not sideways. We're moving onwards and upwards in Local Government Commission thanks to the direction and energy of Kate Meis. Kate?
Thanks, Jake, and it's quite a legacy we have to build on. So all of us who are thinking about moving onwards and upwards also have to recognize the foundation that has been built for us, and I certainly do as well. So I have the pleasure of welcoming you to the 15th Annual New Partners for Smart Growth Conference, and we're very pleased to be co-hosting this conference in partnership with the U.S. EPA and with an impressive list of sponsors, which you've seen on the screen and you'll see featured in your conference packet and on the nice new app as well. So over the last 15 years, this conference has evolved, and with it has helped shape the smart growth movement, which has evolved along the way as well. When we started this conference, when the organization started this conference in 2002, the organization was really ahead of its time in recognizing the important connection between land use decisions and health. So that first conference brought together local elected officials and land use planners with their new partners from public health and from law enforcement. And so that was really groundbreaking at the time. It's a relationship that we recognize now, but that was really new. And that really set the stage for the growth of this conference and the movement at large. And in fact, one of the first conversations we had was here in Portland. And at that time, we brought over 800 forward-thinking leaders together. And today, we are thrilled to be back with over 1,200 forward-thinking leaders from across the nation and the world. Thank you. And over those years, we've recognized that we need many new partners to really create sustainable communities. And so as you look around the room today, you will see much more diversity than you did in the first years of our conference. Sitting amongst, yes, that's worth an applause right there, absolutely. Sitting amongst you, you'll see a range of different perspectives and a range of different people, from youth to seniors, from developers to environmental justice organizations, from education to the arts. There's a range of perspectives and expertise that's with you throughout the room and will be with you throughout the conference. So be aware of that and think about new partnerships you can form and experience you can tap into. Overall, over the 15 years, we've been able to bring 18,000 people together with one collective, one shared goal, and that is building safer, healthier, and more livable communities. So this is really a movement that we're talking about. This is not just a conference. And as a movement, we've recognized that our early work to assure that our land use decisions took into consideration health impacts, we weren't delivering those health benefits to all residents, and we weren't delivering those benefits to all neighborhoods. Even now, residents being born into certain neighborhoods are experiencing drastically different life outcomes. Their life outcomes are determined more by their zip code than their genetic code still. We have to do better than that. And so local governments, from smart growth leaders like Seattle to small agricultural communities like the city of Salinas, are realizing they need to take equity issues and they need to tackle them head on. They need to look at the issues that were exacerbated by the land use and transportation decisions that were made and they're beginning to look at all of their community investments through a racial equity lens. And we're looking at the conference through a racial equity lens as well. Over the last 6 years, we've been committed to looking at equity as a central core of our conference program. We've been providing scholarships to assure that there is a diversity represented in this room and to assure that we have the diverse range of perspectives needed to really inform community development work. So that's what we're committed to. Thank you. And this could not be any more important than it is today, because as we look at what's happening at the national level, as we look at the extreme polarization, the extreme partisanship, we have to reject these notions. We have to reject the idea that fear would drive our discussions. We have to reject the idea that we can turn our back on people in need. And we absolutely have to reject the idea that we should find comfort in people that look like us and that have ideas that mirror our own ideas. That's the opposite of what we need right now. We cannot turn inwards right now. What we need now is a groundswell of diverse partnerships, and we need a diversity of ideas, a multitude of ideas that can grow and evolve to meet our most pressing challenges. And there is no better place to do that than our nation's living laboratories, our communities. At that level, at the local level, there's no room for empty rhetoric. At the local level, residents demand real-world solutions to everyday problems. If we don't get the basics right, if our residents aren't safe, if our residents don't have healthy water to drink, if our residents don't have clean air to breathe and can't drive on safe roads and safe bridges, we can't do the ambitious things that we dream about here at this conference. We have to establish that trust first. So over the next 3 days, that's our job. It's to equip all of you as leaders in your communities with tangible strategies and solutions to do the things we must do in our communities and to continue to inspire and provide best practices so that we can continue to have our ambitious community visions as well. So I'm very pleased to be here with the great list of speakers we have and to be a part of this movement with all of you. It's a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for the work you're doing in your communities, and thank you for joining us at the conference.
Well, that's a grand way to get this conference going. I think you would all agree. For me, it's always a great pleasure to be able to introduce somebody from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I spent 30 years of my professional life working as a pesticide regulator with the U.S. EPA. And when I was talking with our next speaker, the Deputy Regional Administrator for Region 10, I established by bona fides, by using certain names from the past, at least my past, and she recognized that these people did exist, and therefore I exist. And so it's with great pleasure that I introduce Michelle Prizadeh, the Deputy Regional Administrator from Region 10. This is Region 10. She's here to welcome you all.
Thank you, Jake. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and on behalf of EPA and Region 10, as Jake said, where you are, I want to welcome you. This conference is a great annual event where local, state, tribal, and federal government staff, nonprofits, environmental justice organizations, and elected officials can come together and exchange ideas about the latest and greatest ways to make your communities the most healthy places to live, work, and play. And we're here today in beautiful Portland, Oregon, which is certainly an appropriate place to be having these conversations. Portland is a city that shows you can protect the environment, public health, promote economic vitality and job growth, and encourage high-quality life at the same time. This conference is a great chance to step away from your day-to-day offices and work and learn from each other on how you can build greener, healthier, more sustainable communities. We know the term smart growth has been used for many years now, and it's nice to see the ideas and methods are so relevant today, whether you're just getting started in your community or whether you're old hats like our friends here in Portland. Smart growth is important because we know these approaches help communities reap multiple benefits from every dollar that is spent. Creating more walkable neighborhoods means people are less reliant on driving, which of course can reduce air emissions and help improve our local air quality, but it's also good for our health and it lowers health costs. Investing in historic downtowns by reusing existing buildings makes efficient use of past infrastructure investments. Saves money, but it also reduces impacts on the air, land, and water that would otherwise be made with new development. Creating new parks, adding green space can reduce stormwater runoff and protect local sources of drinking water or local species like Pacific salmon right here in the Northwest. But greener neighborhoods do more than that, and you all know that. They also create more inviting neighborhoods that can help attract new residents and new business. Smart growth is also part of the solution to our climate challenge, which President Obama and many others are calling the challenge of our lifetime. Community designs that make it possible to walk more and drive less, green spaces that reduce heat island effect and reduce the need for stormwater treatment, and the use of existing infrastructure are all ways that smart growth can reduce energy needs and greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, smart growth approaches can prepare communities for impacts that they're already dealing with climate change. One example I wanted to share, this year, EPA is providing assistance to 3 Alaskan Native villages to address the very real climate impacts to their communities. In northern Alaska and the Arctic right now, the village of Newtok is in the process of moving to a new location. Shishmaref is evaluating whether to relocate, and Shaktoolik is adapting in place. While these villages plan for their uncertain futures, EPA will work to support the strong partnerships that already exist with the tribes, the state, and other federal agencies to consider sustainability, environmental, and social and economic issues. We are also providing, under our Smart Growth Implementation Assistance Program, support to these coastal communities that are impacted today very greatly by climate change. Moving a village brings critical issues not only to their long-term infrastructure needs, but also how to provide services as they move, as they transition. And the village of Newtok move will take over 10 years to complete. The Smart Growth Implementation Assistance Project is going to focus on their safety needs, emergency evacuation plans, education, health, waste management, energy, water provision, and coordinating environmental review with other federal agencies. We know that the climate challenge is not going to be addressed by EPA alone, but we're trying. Many others have a role to play, including all of our federal partners, people around the U.S. and around the world in your communities, and smart growth strategies can certainly help us fight the climate challenge. So I welcome you all today, and I hope you enjoy all of the many amazing speakers that are participating in this conference, and that you get a chance to share your perspectives on how we can do more to change our growth activities and have happy, healthy, sustainable communities. Thank you and welcome here today.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. And finally, we are in an interesting area of regional government where the Portland Metro Council was created as one of the extremely interesting, one can't say experiments anymore because it's been going for quite a wee while now, but for those of us who live in other parts where there's a more benighted form of regional government, like in California, I certainly, as one, have always looked to Portland Metro as a shining light of what might happen. So we actually have the elected official, we actually have the elected chair of Portland Metro with us today, Tom Hughes. He's going to welcome us as well.
Well, thank you, Jake, and I'm proud to be here on behalf of my colleagues from around the region to welcome you back to Portland after an 11-year absence. I hope whatever it was that we did 11 years ago that caused you to wait so long to come back is something we'll correct this trip, because I think that checking in with Portland periodically is probably a good idea for the smart growth movement in the United States. Not so much because you'll find that we have new things to teach you, but it's always good to have you come to us and tell us what about the things we taught you didn't work. And we can tell you, yeah, they didn't work here either. So keeping this dialogue going, I think, is important. It's interesting because Portland has a reputation for innovative, dynamic, sort of challenging kinds of efforts towards reaching the goals of understanding how to mitigate the consequences of growth on a community. We have one of our 6 desired outcomes is square on some of the stuff that was mentioned by Kate early on, and that is we want the benefits and burdens of growth to be shared equally amongst the citizens in the community and not forced to be borne too much by any one element of the community. So that equity lens has become a very important part of what we do as we go forward with the role that we play in land use planning and some other things. I spent 8 years before I came to this job, by the way, as mayor of one of the larger suburbs in the region, Hillsborough. And so I come at the regional government side from a local government perspective. Some of my colleagues back in local governments, I think some days think I forget that. But it actually does inform a lot about what I do. And in some respects, it teaches me a little bit about what it is about having a regional government composed as Metro is, and why that is important for moving forward on the smart growth innovations that we're trying to put forward. We began a process, which, by the way, did not come to much fruition, of trying to solicit the support of the local business community in looking at funding mechanisms for ongoing infrastructure investments that would help bring our long-range 2040 plan of smart growth plan to fruition. And one of the little exercises that we did as a part of that I thought was instructive, and again, I think it relates back onto why Metro is is one of the more, I think, important innovations in the whole smart growth story of Portland. We asked all of the elected officials who had participated from the 25 cities and 3 counties to identify projects in their community or their jurisdiction that they thought had regional significance. And we got over 150 projects. Some of them with very elaborate identifications of what the regional significance of that project was. The second question was, name a project in some other jurisdiction that you think is important to you on a regional level. And we got 0. Now, this is not because we have, people who are not visionaries leading local governments. It's because your focus in a local government is on what you're doing, what's happening here. We get good cooperation. We have great discussions amongst those folks at the regional level about regional issues, but mostly as it relates to them. As I thought back on it, I thought, well, that's actually kind of a dumb question. It would be like saying, if you had extra money, what projects would you spend it on that are outside of your jurisdiction? And I'd say, what do you mean extra money? I don't have enough money on the projects I have. So there has to be somebody that looks at the big picture and says, which amongst these projects really do have regional significance, and how do we elevate those investments so that it brings to life the bigger regional picture? There are lots of models for regional government around the United States, and some of them have worked well, some of them have not worked as well. The thing that makes Metro unique is not that we're a regional government, and I think we have to clarify that sometimes amongst our own citizens. They think we're the only regional government in the United States. No. we're the only elected regional government in the United States. And that's a significant difference, because what it says is that by being elected by the 1.6 million people in the Portland metropolitan area, I share constituencies with every jurisdiction, every leader of every jurisdiction in the region. And so when we talk about what issues are regional, I can bring the voice of their constituents to the regional discussion that they are very able to express at the local level. And I think that that's an important distinction, and something I hope you'll all go home and urge on your local regional governments, that they all become elected officials. I'm sure you'll find a lot of real support for that back home. I had to run a race that cost somewhere in the neighborhood. I spent about $500,000 and was outspent by my two opponents by a significantly larger amount more than that. So almost everybody desires that kind of career path to getting to the job they want. So I'm sure you'll find great support for that. But with that, I think, as you look around Portland, you'll see a lot of things that you like. And be sure to point out the things to us, the things you don't like, and we'll take note of that also, because I think we're in a stage of trying to constantly improve. And I hope you have a great conference, and I'll see you at many of the events during the conference. Thank you very much.
I am awfully pleased. I'm really happy to be able to introduce Ron Sims. I know Ron Sims is here because I bumped into him earlier on this morning. So where are you, Ron? Oh, there you are, Ron. Well, why don't you start coming up while I sing your praises? Former executive from King County, former deputy secretary of HUD, if my memory serves me right. Is that right? Yep. But now you have a different role in life. You're involved with Obamacare and the state of Washington and implementing the Affordable Health Care Act. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm a grandparent too.
He's a grandparent as well. He's also known to be
more important to me. Yeah.
He's also known to be an accomplished public speaker, and I'm here to tell you, I don't want to get any texts at 5 to 11 saying, you got to cut him off, you got to cut him off. I'll cut you off at 11. This is Ron Sims.
It's an honor to be here, and I'm not supposed to forget to say that you have Infinite Earth Radio, which is a podcast of this entire conference, and I want to make sure that you can use Infinite Earth Radio for all the speakers and all the discussions we have if you want to listen, and you'll hear a lot. It really is great being here, and you're an intimidating group, and you're really an intimidating group. I love my new life. I love being retired. My sons don't, because I get the grandkids, and they're perfect. And when my son was busily telling me about what was happening to my 13-year-old granddaughter, he was going on and on and on and on. And he said, Dad, that 13-year-old, do you know what it's like? And I just stared at him. And then all of a sudden it dawned on him, and I said, there is a God, and God is just. Let's talk about smart growth and the significant changes that have been made. And, when you begin to look at where we're at today, it is a long way from where people started. Smart growth used to be a concept of, can we be smarter about how we grow and where we should grow and what the features should be. And, I can remember going back one time in Washington, D.C. and being told that seemed to be so communistic because we're asking everybody to look the same. And I said, no, we're just asking cities to be sustainable. And but, nowadays it's been fully embraced. I remember going back to Washington, D.C. when I was not confirmed yet. And I went out to see a good friend of mine, John Picari, in USDOT. And I went out to see John, and I said, and we've known each other for ages, and so I went out and said, John, I look forward to working with you. He said, nope. I said, John, I look forward then to kind of coordinating what we're doing. Nope. I said, John, I hope our staffs can kind of work together. He said, nope. And I kept thinking, this meeting is not going well. And then John says, co-conspiracies is so much better. So then we both did the same thing to another one of our friends, Bob Prizadeh. And Bob came in and he was smiling because we knew him too. And I said, John, you got to lead this off because I can't pull it off near as well. But I sat there and I was nodding like this with, John. And I think Bob was going, oh, these are my friends. And then finally we announced to him that he was going to be a part of the co-conspiracy from EPA, which was the first time that the federal government got used to talking to each other. Because we said, why should we isolate our interests? Why should we have EPA doing its thing and HUD doing its thing and USDOT doing those things? And I said, as a local government elected official, that used to be maddening. You used to say, why don't they talk to each other just once? And all of a sudden we realized that we had mutual interest, and it turned out to be very, very effective for us on the sustainability issues. But I really want to say that right now, wow, it's not only, we need new partners. And they're there. But right now, God, I just, it's not that I want to be 30 again. No, I really don't want to be 30 again. I knew everything when I was 30. Now that I'm older, I realize what I don't know. But, to wake up in the morning and be overwhelmed, oh, God, I miss that. And then to be able to have your juices going and to say, wow, I got to be crazy and I got to be just out there and, oh, wow, to relive. I don't have the energy for that anymore, but wow, to be able to see people with the prospect of facing that on a daily basis. If you're going to live, why be bored? And when we go with smart cities and sustainability today will not be a boring subject because there's so much to do. So I'll go through a series of the challenges that I believe are there. It's interesting. We spent, we look at, especially the built environment. We always say who wins and who loses in the built environment. It's very clear. America is a very segregated country. And so what we have now is a whole issue about how do we resolve all the decades of damage we did to neighborhoods that people who were affluent, people who were predominantly white said, we're going to move into these neighborhoods and we'll make them better. And what does the underlying data tells us? It says they're going to live longer, they're going to have lower crime rates, their kids are going to do really, really well. They're in green neighborhoods. Then we had the neighborhoods that we wanted to forget. The least, the last, and the lost of those neighborhoods. And they suffered from not just neglect, but we actually did not want to invest in them very, very much. And you cannot have sustainability and smart growth without those neighborhoods being in play, without them being in play. And so the issues that they face are more complicated than ever. I'll give you an example. We spent billions of dollars trying to make schools work. Billions! And we held teachers accountable. My in-laws are teachers, and they were just going nuts with all the new tests and all the new protocols and all the stuff that they face on a daily basis. And yet we now know that a kid who wakes up in the morning and catches a bus under stress cannot learn in school. It's called cortisol. And if you measure the cortisol in those kids, they cannot learn. They're in a flight response. Our assumptions have been that our genes are untouched by the built environment. And nobody gave anybody permission to mess around with my genes or the genes of any child. And yet we do it every single day by what we build. You put a kid in a neighborhood where they fear, they cannot learn. You can talk about school innovation, they cannot learn. You can talk about any number of things in regards to conduct, they simply cannot overcome the cortisol in their system. They're not supposed to. None of us are supposed to. We want cortisol because we want to run. We want to flee. We want the capacity to do that. I remember reading in the Seattle Times the paper where kids said, I don't feel safe at school. And catching the bus to school, I do not feel safe. A group of kids. Those kids are already on a path of failure. If I had billions of dollars, I wouldn't go after a teacher. I would go after rebuilding a neighborhood so it worked for the kids who lived there. This isn't a teacher problem. This is how we built and designed problem. You give me wider sidewalks. You give me safety points so that elderly can congregate and watch and gather. If you want to give me a neighborhood that is better lit, you want to give me a neighborhood with a trail system, you want to give me a neighborhood where I don't have any blind corners, that's called a safe neighborhood. We also call those good neighborhoods. And you can see them now as architects build them and engineers put them in place. But they don't put them in poor neighborhoods because they're not supposed to have those kinds of living arrangements. If they want a better neighborhood, they should move out. Well, excuse me, I am sorry. This is America. I shouldn't have to move out of my neighborhood to have better health. I shouldn't have to move out of my neighborhood to feel safe. My neighborhood should be as good as anybody else's neighborhood. Don't tell me money and race should be a factor. I'm a human being. I'm entitled to a government, and people who build and plan and who make money are treating me with the same kind of equality they treat every single other community. I'm entitled to that. And you're assembled here today to actually put that together. I mean, I look at all of you and say, wow, you didn't volunteer for this, but it's perfect timing. It's perfect timing. America needs to understand that it does alter genes. Nobody asked any of you to alter their genes, but in fact, we do it every single day. I remember going to a meeting with Dr. Howard Frumkin, who was at the CDC. And it was Howard that made a decision that there were health impacts. I remember we had a study in King County, which was interesting. I remember coming back with these reports from Washington, D.C., from the Joint Center, and I said to Chandler Felt, I said, Chandler, I don't understand all this data. Can you just look at it and tell me what it means? And it basically said that 36% of African-American males under the 30 years of age would have nothing in common with America except their eventual death. And I remember saying to my kids, oh, it's not going to happen in King County. And my kids said, well, yeah, Dad, but is this real? So I give it to Chandler to say, is it real? Now, Chandler is one of those people who you would meet and never, he has a voice to kill for. I mean, he has that melodic, sound intelligent, really wonderful voice. But he loves data. He's a demographer. He just loves data. But I learned as King County executive that the most important thing I could do is stand out of the way of smart people. So I didn't get in their way. I mean, they would come and say, do we have an idea? Can we predict health outcomes by commute? That was done by a land use planner. So we gathered the land use planner, transportation planners, and health planners, argued for a whole year on terminologies and all that stuff. In the end, I said, you have a choice. Arrive at an agreement or look for other employment. All of a sudden, we had a really good document, and the document said, yes, we can. If you commute more than an hour a day, we can tell you that you're going to have a heart attack because your body was never designed for 13 hours of stress. Very predictable and unchanged even to this day in the healthcare field. So I remember giving this document to Chandler saying, and every day, every month I say, Chandler, you got it for me? And Chandler would say, no. Then we're 2 months. I said, Chandler, you got anything for me? No. Now, Chandler was one of my more responsible, smarter people. So at about the 6 months, I said, Chandler, got anything for me? We're working on it. I said, oh, come on, Chandler, help me now. Don't disappoint me. At month 8, Chandler says, you won't believe what we have. And I said, what do we have? He says, we can predict life outcomes of children by the zip code they're in. We can predict the health outcomes of adults and children by the zip code they're in. We can predict anything in anyone's life by the zip code they live in. And so when we went back with Bob Persisepi and John, myself, Secretary Sean Donovan, Secretary LaHood, and Administrator Jackson, we said to them, we have a real systemic problem, which is what happens if you can alter people's destinies by the zip code they're in? And I remember the secretaries all saying they were good with it. I remember having a big battles with OFM because we thought we should ask the question first and then do the grant after we ask the question. OFM wants to do the opposite. We'll tell people what to do and then we'll fund it. No, let's ask them. And as a result, all 3 agencies combined at a review of sustainability grants. great staff ahead of it or put in charge of it, and away they took off because we harmonized our efforts. You could not talk about zip codes independent of what EPA was charged with. You couldn't do it differently than CDC on the health impacts. You couldn't divest transportation, and you couldn't divest what HUD does in terms of all of its grants and its insurance policies for housing. They all had to meld. I was really happy when the President of the United States got up with an executive order and charged every single agency never again to allow for a zip code to be a life determinant. He said our goal as a nation must be that they will be an address and an address only. And so all of you are going to be charged with doing something that seems to be impossible, is to make a community fair and just and workable. You know, I look at healthcare data, and we had a wonderful meeting. I don't know why. I was hoping I would never be asked to work healthcare. I really was. I was ecstatic about the prospect of not having to think about healthcare. And then the governor called and said, I want you to chair the Health Benefit Exchange. I went, oh, wow, you know. And I said, what do they do? He said, they implement ACA. I said, well, ACA is fine. We can implement that. He said, no. I want you to be the board chair. And so, you know, we got 4 Ds, 4 Rs, and the governor gets their choice, and so there's actually 5 Ds and 4 Rs. But we realized that partisanship should never stand in the way in regards to healthcare outcomes. So in our last meeting, we're sitting there thinking, hold a second. Healthcare costs keep going up and up and up. I mean, how do you keep healthcare costs from going down? I said, it's worse than that. When I was in D.C., there was a group of us. People call us the Darth Vaders. Our issue was to look at data and try to interpret it. And our argument has been, and it's remained, that the healthcare system of America, as it now is financed and work, collapses in about 25 to 30 years because it cannot afford the disease trends. It'll be too expensive. And we needed to alter that. But remember, the built environment creates illnesses. It creates illnesses. How you look at the built environment, how you function in it, will determine whether you're going to be healthy or not. I live in 98144. I get a pill if I have diabetes. If I'm in 98118, which is right next to me, in Seattle, you have the lakeside, and then down, we call Rainier Valley, then you have Beacon Hill. So if you're in the valley, if you're a 68-year-old African-American male, you're likely not going to have diabetes, but you probably will never get a pill. You'll have surgery instead. That was the outcome. So we look and say, there's nowhere in the country, where we can tell you today, we can tell you in every place in the country, nobody's exempt from it, where we can tell you that you are going to be responsible for what we call something that is absolutely critical, whether we can sustain providing health care for every single citizen. You can't ration it. You shouldn't deny anybody it. But it will collapse unless we have sustained cities that are concerned about neighborhoods that are undeveloped even to this day. So the real issue that comes in is, who should our partners be? Who should be added to the partnership? And And remember, it's really going to be important because this is going to be a century without mercy. This century will have no mercy. You think that China's going to care what happens in your city? I mean, they'll say to the businesses, relocate. Do you think India's going to think about that? 2 economies that by 2050 will be larger than our own? You think the European Union's going to care? I mean, a little bit. But they're going to have their own challenges. This will be a century without mercy. Every city, whether you're large or small, whether you're Midwest, Southern, Eastern, Northeastern, Northwestern, Southwestern, every city will be faced with either being a declining city or a city that can function and compete in this 21st century. And the real issue is it'll come down to how they're organized and how they're sustained. And it'll come down to your body of work. And so your mission has to be that we're going to have equity in every one of those cities. And that means, in terms of equity, that we will invest in neighborhoods that are not functioning now. The idea that everybody's going to be treated the same is what ensures inequity. The issue is how do you transfer sums and rebuild those neighborhoods? You can do that through the Community Reinvestment Act. I don't know why we're not talking to banks. I mean, banks are supposed to do this. If I were talking to a bank, I'd say, here's a neighborhood we're going to rebuild. Why? Because there's health benefits there. There are educational benefits there. I remember the Justice Department coming to me, and I remember they're on my list. I said, on my office calendar, I said to my staff, oh, God, the Justice Department's going to come see me. I'm going to be arrested. And I was running through all the things I did that they didn't know about, and I couldn't figure out how any of those would result in my being arrested on a federal offense. I just could not think. So they walk in, and I'll never forget what they said. They said, Mr. Sims, you gave a speech one day on the built environment's impacts on people. I said, yes. Well, we decided to run a study. And you know what we found? If you compare identical demographics, poor African Americans living anywhere, poor Latinos living anywhere, Asians, the whole list, he said the crime rates, depending upon the neighborhoods, differed by 70%. Green neighborhoods, the ones you talk about with wider sidewalks, the ones you talk about with park space and trails, curbs, the ones that look safe, that have no blockages, their crime rate is 70% less. I said, whoa, that's really good. You mean you're going to start giving money for crime fighting? They said, look, the funds we control are the ones that buy cameras on your badges, in the cars. They said, we don't think he said, basically you're saying that good planning and good building should compete with other law enforcement functions. And although we agree, we can't go to the Attorney General with that without an explanation. I said, oh, there is an explanation. He said, what? I said, oh, we evolved in grasslands. He said, well, that's not kind of the answer we wanted. But nonetheless, it is factually correct. So we spend money on police and law enforcement. We spend money on every, healthcare. We spend money on teachers and schools instead of redirecting those funds into neighborhoods and rebuilding them so they are functional. And they're functional for kids, they're functional for senior citizens, they're functional for parents, just functional. It's a neighborhood you're proud to be in, that you love being in. My neighborhood is, I live in a great neighborhood. I tell people I live in Mount Baker. People say, wow, it's a great neighborhood. Mount Baker was abandoned. I bought that house. The house we bought was a money pit when we bought it. It's a money pit now. We were the first offer in 6 months. The house next to me was on the market for 18 months. Now, when the old timers meet, we say, you saw all the money these people are spending to move into this place? Because we could not afford to move in our own neighborhood. We need to be on a rebuilding process. Everybody should be proud of their neighborhood. No one wants to leave their neighborhood, and everybody should be allowed to dream in those neighborhoods, to believe that they will have a high quality of life. I have 3 kids. They are boys, and now they're men. I always loved them, always loved them. I like them now because they're financially emancipated. My parents, when I go back to Spokane, I always go back to my parents' house. I just walk back. I don't know why. 1218 East 5th Avenue, Spokane, Washington, 99202. Always walk by that house. My mom and dad used to, when I put up in my 49 Cadillac, they used to open the curtains and wave at me when I came back from college and wave again when I left. And they don't wave anymore. There is no Renault Dauphine owned by my brother, James, my oldest brother, or a 1953 Dodge, which was owned by my twin brother, parked in front. They got to drive while I got to drive my 49 Cadillac. They're gone. I think about that. Only one person from 1218 East 5th Avenue. Only one. So I look at my kids and I want their life to be better than mine. I look at my grandkids and I want their lives to be better than my son's. That's what you're all tasked for, because ours is not a momentary fight. Ours is a generational one. Ours are whether we're going to be a great country and we're going to provide great opportunities because every grandkid is entitled to a good shot at life. Every grandchild is entitled to the best shot we can give them. They're entitled to our belief, our attention, and our encouragement. But it will not be easy. I remember having to go up with a group of high school kids to climb Mount Rainier. I remember the first time I was told that in a letter, and I said to my wife, look, we had 3 sons, but the oldest was the one that was the most challenging. He's a librarian now, which is magical because he never read a book. I said to my wife, look what the sadist did to me this time. Mount Rainier was pretty amazing. Young women did not want to climb with young men. They found young men to be careless. Young men thought young women were weak. I was on a rope team with 3 young women. They pulled me right up the mountain. They just fly up mountains. They don't walk up. They don't hike up. Women fly up mountains. Young men just complain all the way up the mountain. But you'll learn that everybody counts on a rope team. Everybody counts. You'll never ascend to the summit. Everybody counts. As a nation, we must realize that everybody counts on a rope team. In the most competitive century ever in the history of humankind, we cannot have anybody off that rope team. Everybody has to pull and push. When you're on a rope team at 11,000 feet and you're taking in 2/3 less oxygen than you're taking in right now at this table, where you walk and then suck in your air, when you're up there, you realize how important it is to have somebody, when you really want to cry as an adult, to have somebody say, don't cry, Mr. Sims, because I'll cry too. So nobody cries. No one cries. I miss 1218 East 5th Avenue. But I realized that in the scheme of things, a higher authority than anybody in this room determined that their lives were done. They had done incredible things. I love my parents who were called so many names during this, because they were civil rights activists in a period of time in Spokane where it was not welcome. I didn't even know my last name was Sims, because we were called every other name possible. I was sent home by my teacher in 5th grade to tell my parents to go behave. I said to my parents dutifully, I was told to tell you to behave. My father looked at my mother and said, Toots, time for another demonstration. And that's what they did. This is your time. This is your time. Your time to be great. Your time not to accept the status quo. Your time to knock down the walls. Your time to believe you can knock down those walls. That we can have equity and high-performing living environments and that everybody can benefit. It's your time. It's not going to be done outside of you. It's going to be done because of you and your energy. 1,200 of you at this conference? My God, I would wish for the days when we had 1,200 people agreeing on anything. And yet you're here determined to make changes in your community. This nation is waiting for you. When you look at the tumult that we all, this election season, when I look and say, what are these people talking about? They need to talk about America. You are America. You are the people who have the ignition keys for change. Your job has not been done. You have so much living to do, so much caring, so much loving, so much aspiration. Your time is not done. So I want to applaud all of you for coming to this conference. I want to thank you from the bottom of an old man's heart who just dreams, just dreams that Nayan, Zanaya, and Amina will have a better life than I did. That Zanaya and Amina and Nayan and the one that's due in July, that they can dream. Peace to you.